Ever look at a piece of art or a building and just feel it? You know, you can't quite put your finger on why it's so captivating. Well, it often comes down to this hidden principle, this secret dance between opposites. So today, let's get into this idea of harmony in tension, how the incredible clash between rigid structure and organic flow creates something unforgettable.
Okay, this sounds like the beginning of a joke, right? But the answer, seriously, gets right to the heart of what we find beautiful. I mean, one is a marvel of nature, the other a monument of human design, but they both tap into the very same powerful idea, tension.
So, what are we really talking about here? It's this amazing interplay, this kind of dance between two things that shouldn't go together. Just picture it, the sharp, predictable line of a perfect square meeting the gentle, wild arc of a curve. That's it. That's the sweet spot. That is harmony in tension.
But why? Why are we so drawn to this? It's not just some fancy artistic taste. It's actually baked right into our brains. Let's dig into the science behind our almost automatic love for this stuff.
It really comes down to how our minds work. We are pattern-seeking machines, you know? We're hardwired to make sense of the world by finding order. But at the same time, we're totally captivated by things that break that order just a little bit. And that tension, that's where all the magic happens.
And check this out. This tension literally lights up two different parts of our brain. When we see those rigid geometric shapes, our parietal lobe kicks in. That's the part that loves logic and order. But then, when we see organic flowing forms, our amygdala gets going. And that's our emotional center. So art that combines both, it gives our brain this complete, incredibly satisfying workout.
And look, this isn't just a theory. The data totally backs this up. Just look at this number for a second. 75%. What could that be?
That's right. A study in the Journal of Design Perception found that a whopping 3/4 of people feel a stronger emotional connection to spaces that blend both of these elements. So we're talking about a measurable fact of how good design actually makes us feel. Pretty cool, huh?
All right, so we get the why. Now let's get to the fun part, the where. The proof of this whole idea is everywhere, hiding in plain sight in some of the most famous masterpieces of art and architecture.
Just think about it. From the super strict grids of Mondrian back in the 30s, to the wild, chaotic drips of Pollock just a decade later, all the way to the smooth, sculptural forms of Barbara Hepworth and the mind-bending architecture of Zaha Hadid. This is not some passing trend. It's a technique that artists have been using for ages.
Let's zoom in on Zaha Hadid's building in Baku for a minute. It's the perfect example. The whole structure looks like it's rising from the ground like a fluid wave, but you know it's built on incredibly precise geometric principles. It feels futuristic and natural at the exact same time. That's the power of this tension in action.
And in painting, you can see these two extremes that somehow get to the same result. On one hand, you've got Mondrian, whose work is all about imposing a strict geometric order on the canvas. On the other hand, you've got Pollock, who is all about embracing total chaos and flow. But somehow, both of them create this incredible energy, this powerful impact, all because they mastered their own unique version of tension. And hey, this idea isn't just for visual art. Think about music, right? The mathematical perfection of a Bach fugue versus the wild, spontaneous freedom of free jazz improvisation. Or in sculpture, how someone like Barbara Hepworth could carve a soft, organic hole inside a perfectly smooth, hard-edged sphere. This concept really is everywhere.
Okay, so let's peel back another layer here. It turns out there are actually two different ways that artists can create this tension. We can call them active and passive. And understanding the difference is really key to appreciating what the creator is doing. So you've got active tension. That's when the contrast is literally built into the object itself. Think back to Hadid's building, where the sharp lines and flowing curves are physically touching. But then there's passive tension, which is way more subtle. It's created by how we move around the art. A perfect example is Richard Serra's Tilted Arc. It's this giant, rigid wall of steel that forces you and me to walk in a flowing, curved path around it. The tension isn't in the object, it's between the object and us.
The designer who wrote the essay that inspired this explainer really says it best. Whether the tension is active or passive, the goal is always the same: to create a real, rich experience for the viewer. It's the ultimate balancing act for any creator, knowing when to be precise and when to just let go and be free.
So, we've covered the what, the why, and the how. Now let's bring it all home and talk about how you, yes you, can start to master this dance and use these ideas for yourself.
So how do we do it? Well, it kind of boils down to 3 simple steps. First, just embrace that instinct. We are all naturally drawn to this balance, so trust your gut. Second, start consciously playing with both active and passive tension. Build it into your creations and think about how people will experience them. And finally, always remember the goal: to craft an experience that gives people that complete, unforgettable feeling.
At the end of the day, this is the big takeaway. It's not about being purely chaotic or purely orderly. It's that delicate, intentional balance between the two that takes a work of art from being just ordinary to being truly timeless. It goes from something you just look at to something you really feel. And that brings us to one final question, and I'll just leave this with you to think about. Whether you're a painter, a designer, a coder, a musician, or really just someone who loves beautiful things, how do you blend structure and flow in what you do? The answer just might be the secret to your next masterpiece.